Hi, my name is Matthew, and this should be Wine Salesmanship 104. And in this one, I'm really going to go in depth as to what other selling features can you find instead of just the tasting notes, like I said in Wine Salesmanship 101. And so the first thing I really want to make clear is that on the bottle, you'll find several selling features depending on the bottle. For example, if the bottle looks beautiful, and some bottles do, and people will buy based on beauty alone and the label alone, that's one of your selling features. Secondly, if the bottle says it has high alcohol content on the bottle, that's one of your selling features. Or if the bottle has a really unique name like Josh or Old Ghost, some people will buy Josh simply because they have a person in their family named Josh. So you get a lot based on just looking at what the bottle tells you. But I'm going to go a bit further, and I'm going to show you a little bit of the research that I do to really bring home a lot more selling points than the average Joe when doing this process. I'm going to start with a bottle I drank recently called Old Ghost Zinfandel. It was a 2015 by Clinkerbrick Winery. And the first thing I always look at is I always try to find their technical sheet with all their stats on it. So here we go. I go to Google. And I type in Old Ghost Zinfandel technical sheet. And if you notice, this first result here is the actual technical sheet for the wine I drank. It says 17, so you may think I'm not going to actually click on this because this is 17, not 15. But the fact is, some wineries will only post the most recent technical sheet. Some wineries will even misname the link on Google when they post it as well. And so you still want to click on the first one to check it out. So here we go. So here's the technical sheet, and as you notice, they did mislabel it. On Google, it's labeled 2017. This is 2015. No big deal, it happens sometimes. What can you learn from this technical sheet that you can give the customers and give them as a clear explanation of sort of your product line? First, I actually recommend printing this, because if you scroll down, you actually see a map of California in the background. And you see the tributaries of the San Francisco Bay and some of the rivers that feed into it. And you can actually see exactly where they're pointing out right there, where my arrow is, where this winery, where the grapes are coming from. And so you can easily sort of use this as an explanation of this is exactly where this wine is from. This is the terroir you're dealing with. And you can also talk about it in quite simple terms. You can say this is a Lodi Zinfandel, and Lodi is really well known for their Zinfandels. And as such, now you actually have a really good selling point, a location. And locations should be outside of alcohol content. Locations should be one of the number one things you investigate when you're investigating selling points. And especially a Lodi Zin for Zinfandel is extremely critical because a lot of the best Zins in the world come from there. So if you can use that as a selling point, the better you are. Second, if you notice on this, in the description of the vineyard highlights, it says where my arrow is, this 102-year-old vineyard was planted. That in of itself is another selling point for you. Because if you can say to customers, hey, I got some great 102-year-old wine, even if you're over-exaggerating just a little bit, you're not telling an untruth, you're telling a truthful aspect of the wine, and they're interested in it. They want to gravitate over to what you're having there. A final thing to note from this is you're often given the story of how the name Old Ghost came about, and customers love stories. If you tell them, for example, if you're doing Josh and you tell them all about Josh and who he was and why he made the wine he did, in reality, his name was Joseph Carr, and Josh is more of a nickname than an actual name, for example. Customers love that. They love to hear that deeper story to it and that deeper understanding of it as well. And it actually encourages them to buy the wine much more, or at the very least, they're trusting you more as a wine consultant. And if they're trusting you more, then you have more sway over their opinions as well and what they think and how they think about the wine you're sampling to them. Trust is key in this business, and if you can facilitate it, the better you are. If they can see you as intelligent and someone who knows his wines, the better you are. Final point on this. In vital statistics, you'll often get some really key selling points for this process of selling wine. For example, if you look at production, it says 3,000 cases. You can, as a selling point, talk about this product as being very rare. There are only 3,000 cases produced ever. And that can actually motivate people to buy versus not to buy. You'll see some other things here, and in general, when you're looking at a technical sheet, you really need to use your own judgment as to what is valuable for you as a selling point and what is not. I would argue a couple things. Story behind the product and the name, location, distinguishing features about the location, and or is it rare, the product you're having. As you can see, there's also taste, which is what I talked about on Wine 101, about how important taste is really to the selling experience and what you're offering customers. And finally, when in doubt, be able to talk a little bit about the philosophy of clinker brick or the vintage notes. But to me, that's your judgment. I've isolated a couple of variables to look at here to really get a good take and a good understanding of this wine and its selling points and what you can sort of deliver to customers as a value added in your selling point process. But your judgment is fair as well. And if you think something is awesome about what you are reading in this technical sheet, bring it out by all means. But the 5 I've indicated and the things I've indicated are going to be particularly potent because I've seen them work to encourage customers to buy the particular wine you're selling and to really frame the wine in the best possible light as well. Because remember, framing the product, making the product seem cool is the goal here. Now, one more thing. I want to go back to Google. And I want to show you a different product, Gooseneck Vineyards, because I think they do another thing here that is very valuable in the selling process and what selling points that you can actually offer people. So you go to the website, let it load, and let's say you're going to Our Wines. One of the things I think they do very valuable and should be part of your research, every time you research a wine, you should go to the company's webpage and do a browsing of it like I am. But let's go to the rosé. One of the things they do that's really valuable is they have these food pairing videos that's over here on the right. And you can actually watch them. Let's watch that. And these are really valuable because they're allowing you to say in the selling process, this is the perfect pairing for it. Bruschetta with ricotta. Anytime you can actually give a pairing to a customer, you're actually bringing value added and more trust in the selling experience with that guest, with that customer. And so you should always look for these pairings, or even if they have a cocktail recipe with the particular gooseneck that you can find as well. That's very valuable as well. For example, in the last tasting I did, I actually heard from a customer that she loves pairing the rosé with cranberry liqueur. as a really perfect cocktail recipe. And you can use that as a salesman when you find these pairings, when you find these cocktail recipes that use the wine that you're sampling. You can actually use that as a benefit to you and the actual sales experience, offering you yet another sales point that you can deliver to customers. Finally, and the final story and the final thing that I want to add in terms of additional selling points you can find is go to our story. Sometimes this is very simple and you can't gain much out of it, but sometimes this is much more complicated or much more interesting to customers. So one of the things about this brand that people find cool is that they scour the globe. They're an American brand, Rhode Island based, but they go all over the world to find the wines that they love, that over-deliver, but are always true to grape variety. And so when you're reading their story and you're looking at their mission and what they value, it's really helpful to customers to be able to hear that and be able to understand that these are people who really try to over-deliver on the wine that they do and really try to go everywhere to find the best possible wines that they really like. Customers love to understand that. And in fact, a lot of customers will be confused by certain products who are in rare places in the United States unless you actually offer that as an additional selling point for the wine. So again, we talked about a lot, and I'm going to stop this video and conclude it right now. The main thing is use your best judgment. There's a lot out there. There's a lot you can find on Google itself, but use your best judgment as to what's particularly potent and valuable for the wine you're demonstrating and what is not. Thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this.